Hey guys, welcome back to Pro Life 365. So I was on Twitter and I was looking for people who would like to support me in my effort to reverse the pro-abortion traction that they've been getting recently. They've been passing a lot of pro-choice bills, and I want to put a stop to that. So I was on Twitter and I was looking for people to connect with, and I was very fortunate to run into a state representative by the name of Walter Hudson. So Mr. Walter Hudson is an incredible individual. We talked about many things. I was blessed to record our discussion and I want to share it with you guys. He gave a lot of insights regarding our issue with abortion here in this country and what he recommends that we need to do in order to change things. He thinks right now one of our problems is that conservatives are not turning out to vote, and that needs to be addressed. We need to push conservatives to go to the ballot and vote. It's one thing if people are coming out to the ballots and voting in favor of these pro-abortion bills, but it's another thing if people are not going to the ballot and voting against them. So that needs to change. He also recommended that conservatives reevaluate their stance on life. For whatever reason, there is a group of closet conservatives that have decided to be pro-choice, but to not be vocal about it. That also needs to be addressed. And lastly, he wants to remind the female community that they need to learn from the mistakes of the women in the past. That women are coming out and they're regretting their abortion vocally. That people like Britney Spears wrote in her book that aborting her child was the most devastating thing that she'd ever done. So these kind of stories need to be used, they need to be used, they need to be moved into the community more and more and more, because they're shunned. You're not allowed to talk about how much abortion hurt you. You're not allowed to talk about how devastating it was or that it caused you psychological problems. All those things are taboo, but more and more women are feeling more confident to discuss this, and those stories need to be parroted, they need to be repeated, they need to be shared, so that when these ballots are in front of the common person, those stories are what come to mind when they have to make a decision on whether or not they want to enshrine abortion in their state from here to kingdom come. So this discussion was incredible. I was really happy to have him and to be able to capture this moment and to share it with you guys. And just briefly on Mr. Hudson, according to his Wikipedia page, this is a little bit more about him. He's a representative for the state of Minnesota for District 30A. He campaigned on the promises to reverse the progress of critical race theory in public schools, to shut down the sexualization of students through quote unquote sex ed courses, and to, of course, abolish abortion. He won his election in 2022 with flying colors at a rate of 62 to 37% against his opponent. And I'm very, very pleased to be able to have this discussion recorded so that you guys can take a minute, take it in, and hopefully share it with other people. All right. So without further ado, Mr. Walter Hudson. Awesome.
Okay. So, so in other words, my position on the pro-life issue is on one end of the spectrum, which does not necessarily mean that the other side's characterization of that position is accurate, because it's not. The kind of totally unrealistic hypothetical scenarios that they come up when they talk about this, like, well, what if
right.
You had to have a terminated pregnancy, because if you don't, the mom's gonna die at like 8 months, and it's like, come on, like that kind of stuff rarely ever happens, and if it does,
right.
Yeah, it rarely ever happens, and in the events where it does, you're no longer really talking about abortion as such, because as a practical matter, that is not what abortion is. Abortion is not some Sophie's choice or Hobbesian choice that has to be made under kind of a prisoner's dilemma. Yeah, exactly. The overwhelming majority of what we call abortion is just, I don't want my kid, I'm not ready, I don't feel like this right now, I'm embarrassed,
exactly,
I don't like this, it's uncomfortable, so I'm just going to end it. It's elective, and it's about convenience, and it's about wanting to basically trying to erase what you did.
Right.
So,
It's used as a
And it,
band-aid. It's like you said, it's used to correct an inconvenience.
Mhm.
These last ditch efforts that are always brought up to excuse abortion, that are just the most outrageous stories, you know, a 9-year-old who got pregnant, which I'm not saying is impossible. It's just
Mhm.
extremely rare. And then when you go to them and say, well, look, if we allowed abortion to be legal, rape and incest, but illegal for everything else, would you be okay with that? And the answer is always
Exactly.
no. It's
Correct.
always no.
And so, in a way, I kind of appreciate the position that they've left us in and what they've done, because I'm already using this. Is we don't have to mess around with that hypothetical nonsense anymore, because they have firmly planted the goalpost at 9 months, fully developed, completely viable, ready to breathe, 1 second from birth. That's where
Exactly.
they planted the goalpost, not with any exceptions, but without exception, for any reason or for no reason at all.
California, if the baby ends up dead after birth, they won't investigate. That's where they're
Um,
at.
yeah, right. And so that's where the goalpost is at. And so that's what they're stuck defending. They don't get to drag us into these hypotheticals. Well, what if this? What if that? No, here's what you've done. Here's what you legalized. Here's what you're for.
Right.
That's what you have to defend. That's where this conversation is going to take place. It's not going to take place in some hypothetical fantasy land of possibilities and maybes and what ifs. We're going to talk about what you have actually done and what is actually occurring right now under the laws that you passed. You know, um, but at any rate, going back to my point regarding the Republican Party, I think um, the dirty little secret that these amendment elections has really highlighted is that there is indeed a pro-abortion, a silent pro-abortion contingent within the Republican Party.
Yes.
Um, and they might not be as fervent or as militant or as radical as the pro-aborts on the left and in the Democrat Party, but they still, I imagine, a lot of kind of personal, sentimental reasons, care about quote unquote access, and a lot of it is, you know, I'm a 35-year-old, um, wine mom in the suburbs, and 15 years ago I was playing around in college a lot and had an abortion or two, and I don't want to be made to think about that or feel bad about that. And so, in order to absolve my conscience, I'm going to take the pro-abortion side of the issue. You know, but
Yes.
I'm still a mom and I'm still conservative overall. I want my taxes to be low, and so I'm a Republican. But
Right.
if you give me an opportunity to vote just on the issue, I'm going to vote for abortion.
Yeah, that's what's so eerie about this. Um, when it's isolated, then all of a sudden conservatives are looking a whole lot more like liberals. Because here's where, to me, it's weird. And this is probably why they're doing it, but it's still frustrating. For those suburban moms that knew that this Ohio amendment wouldn't just allow abortion to continue in the way that it is legal or that it was legal before this amendment passed, which was up to like 20 weeks, I believe. Um, no, it extends the access to abortion through all 9 months for pretty much any reason, as long as you can, convince your doctor that this is what you want. Um, with that in mind, if they knew that when they went to go vote, they have just committed betrayal. I mean, they've betrayed the Conservative Party by doing that, because all of those efforts that were combined in the conservative movement by pro-lifers to roll back abortion mandates to as early as humanely possible, they just reversed that. And they're calling themselves conservatives. They just reversed all that progress because abortion was already legal in Ohio. Why are you voting to enshrine it through all 9 months if it's already legal? yeah, I get it. You're afraid that they're going to roll it back even further, but that was not what this amendment was about. It was about extending it. It was about enshrining it and extending it, and they voted in favor of that. To me, that's an act of betrayal. And
Well, so it, in particular cases, it may be right. Like, so it all depends on the degree to which uh, the individual voter is fully cognizant of what it is that they're voting on. But I would suspect, and I'd be willing to risk $1 or $2 on it, that the vast majority of Republicans or conservatives who voted for that amendment in Ohio did not fully comprehend what it was that they were voting for, and they bought into the way that it was sold by its proponents as we're this kind of nebulous quote unquote access or health care or reproductive right, all these euphemisms that they have
right.
that obscure the details of what it is that they're actually doing. And I think there's a certain degree of not wanting to know, right? Like if this is something like if you're that suburban mom that I was talking about who made a few mistakes in college and doesn't want to be made to feel bad about it, then how much do you want to dig into the details of policy? This isn't a decision you're making based upon the particulars and nuances of the policy. It's a decision that you're making entirely emotionally and with a very personal motivation to kind of place yourself, to kind of absolve yourself of a sense of moral guilt.
Okay, so then that begs me to ask you another question. So why are they voting retroactively? Why are their motives buried in the past and they're making them a reality now? I mean, you could argue that these suburban moms are trying to protect their daughters so that if their daughters are messing around in college, they have access. But I just feel like, like the Kellyanne Conways, she's running around saying that, birth control is the Republicans' only way out so that they can advocate for women's rights in some way, shape, or form. I don't, I'm shocked at this, whatever's hanging on from the third wave, fourth wave feminist movement that just won't give up, even though Roe is gone. It's like
Yeah.
it has to show itself again. And I'm trying to figure out what is motivating that, because I am a Floridian. I currently live in Nebraska, but my home is Florida. But Florida, Nebraska, Arizona, they are going to be the next victims of these amendments. I watch as people are in the streets collecting signatures for these abortion ballot initiatives, and they're collecting enough signatures. People want this back. So, and I'm very, very confident that the women who want it back are past childbearing years. It's like
Yeah.
they're trying to relive those days, and it's incredibly frustrating because Gen Z millennials who are able to carry kids, they're overwhelmingly pro-life. Like, maybe not so much in the millennials. I would say it's about 50-50, but Gen Z is arguably more pro-life, and for a sick, sad reason. It's because millennials aborted their kids and the previous generation aborted their children. So if you're aborting kids, you're not going to have kids to represent your opinion, but the conservatives had kids. So do the math. There are more conservative kids born now, and they are leaning overwhelmingly pro-life, and that's a good thing. And I've heard different polls, I've seen different polls, and of course the polls will say what you want them to say. But doing this kind of work for over a decade, I've seen more high schoolers come out speaking on behalf of life. I've seen more college students coming and being on our side when we go to college campuses now and helping us defend our cause. And it's not just us talking to a mass of students that all disagree with us bringing a pro-life message to their campus. No, the students are battling this out with us because they are aligning with our side. And that to me is the first time I've seen that in 15 years. So I just I'm frustrated because, which is why I wanted to have this meeting in the first place. And maybe you can give me some insights on this as well. What are we doing wrong and what do we need to do right in the next 8, 9 months? Like, we don't have a whole lot of time. Obviously, we have a marketing and a propaganda problem. The other side is running these through under the pretext of you're going to lose your rights. It's like it's an identity crisis that women are experiencing right now that they're jumping to correct. And the other side either just doesn't have the resources or they're just not doing much about it. I'm curious how many pro-lifers went out and actually voted no on issue 1. You know, they were supposed to actually go to the ballot and vote no, not just hope that people didn't vote yes, right? It goes both ways. The pro-choicers went out and they showed that they wanted this amendment to pass in Ohio. But did the pro-lifers go to the ballot? Did they show up and literally check off no? I'm worried that they didn't. And I need to know what we need to do to keep that from happening in Florida and in Arizona and in Nebraska.
I'll tell you, and again, it's speculative and anecdotal. I don't run a polling firm. I'm not a political consultant, right? So I'm just giving you my sentiment and my instinct on this. And so we talked about that demographic, and it isn't just suburban moms, but I use them kind of as like a
right. I'm not just picking on them.
Example.
I'm talking about women in general.
But there's a demographic, a certain demographic that I think is probably best encapsulated as just women who have had abortions, right? So women who have had abortions represent a huge cross section of our society and of our community and of our electorate. Right. And those kind of guilt dynamics that I referenced earlier are always going to be in play with their interaction with this issue. And so I think what we need to start doing is, instead, because the pro-life side, we are so mortified by the horror of what abortion is that we spend virtually all of our time talking about that horror. We talk about how terrible it is that we're doing this to our children, and then the particulars of specifically how we're going about doing it. And for that demographic of women who have had abortions, their instinctual response to that is going to be to pull away from you and do whatever they can to get you to go away, because you are reminding them of something that they did, right? And so I think a big part of the strategy going forward is pivoting from that, because certainly there's the time when you do have to remind an audience of what it is that we're actually talking about. That we are talking about killing children. We are talking about denying civil rights to human beings. We are talking about brutal, inhumane procedures that cause pain, and that leave women with physical and mental scars. We do need to remind audiences of that when it is appropriate. But I think what we also need to add to the mix and dial up significantly is an argument from the perspective of a woman who has had an abortion as to why this status quo of abortion to the moment of birth should not happen and should not be the case. And this is how I think we should be doing it. We should be talking about what drives a woman to make this decision. And the beauty of talking about what drives a woman to make this decision is that you can kind of smuggle in the whole personhood concept and the truth of what it is that we're talking about into that conversation. Because when you start talking about the difficulty of making the decision to have an abortion, the implicit premise there, whether it's spoken or not, is, well, why is it difficult, right? Like, what is it about this decision that makes it difficult? And we know, and they know, and everybody knows that the answer to why it's a difficult decision is because mom knows she's killing her kid. That's what makes it a difficult decision. If she didn't know she was killing her kid, the decision wouldn't be difficult. If it was just a simple medical procedure, like going and getting a cyst removed or having a heart cath or something, there wouldn't be any sense of moral hand-wringing over it. You would just do it if you thought it was the healthy thing for you to do. The fact that it's difficult is your conscience and our conscience as a society confessing to us that this is the killing of a child. And so the question that begs, that raises, is why in God's name would a woman ever make that decision? And there is an answer to that question. There's tons of answers to that question. Women make this decision because of the way that men treat them. They make this decision because of the way that women treat each other. They make this decision because of the social pressures that are placed upon them to be a girl boss and to prove that they're just as good as the boys and could do anything that a man can do. They make this decision because of the way that we've demonized and vilified and discounted the role of motherhood and the importance of raising up the next generation or bringing life into the world. These are the reasons why women make this decision. And so let's start approaching the conversation around abortion by addressing the root reasons why. Let's talk about the culture. Let's talk about how men treat women. Let's talk about how women treat each other. Let's talk about what the social expectations around women are and why it is. Why are we choosing as a society? Why are we facilitating institutions and a culture that pressure our sisters and our mothers and our nieces and our neighbors and our friends to kill their own kids? What are we doing wrong? And by approaching the issue, asking those questions, it is going to put the left on the defense, because now they have to justify why they don't want to have that conversation, right? Why they don't want to talk about it. And then another thing we need to focus heavily on is we need to appropriate and redirect their usage of terms like access to healthcare, reproductive choice, and just access generally, right? A woman's right to choose, these types of terminologies. Because what the left has been doing, certainly in this state of Minnesota, is they've been systemically denying reproductive rights and access to health care to women. They've been doing that by targeting pregnancy resource centers, these charities that provide material and moral support for women who are experiencing crisis, for women who are in need, who don't know whether or not they're ready to be mothers and are teetering on that choice, and who need some form of counseling. Like, it's like you have organizations that are largely entirely privately funded, and to the extent that they're publicly funded, Democrats are voting to take that funding away.
That's true.
And they are actually coming alongside women and supporting them and providing for them and giving them counseling and treating them like a person and addressing those kind of root questions of why are you thinking about that you need to do this? Why are you thinking that you can't be a mother now? Right. And the Democrats' position is, we don't want you to have access to that. We don't want that to be a reproductive choice that is available to you. We don't want you to have that health care. The only option we want to facilitate is the option of killing your kid. And you, as a Democrat, you need to defend why that is your position. Why is your position that the best, first, and last choice you have on offer for women is killing their own kids?
It's to kill their children. Right. That's what they want to be the primary, the only choice available. That is insane. And you're absolutely right. If there's anyone who's taking away health care and access to reproductive health care, it's the other side. It's the Democrats. How could you say that you're in favor of a woman's access to health care by taking away free prenatal care?
Right.
Like, how do you defend that? I don't.
Right.
That's so true. That's an incredible point. And I do think we need to double down on talking about that, because again, the other side, like you mentioned, they've done an incredible job at using euphemism in their favor. They've also done an excellent job of just synthesizing their message down to a few clever words. My body, my choice. Access. Tread. What was it? The one with the snakes?
Don't tread on me.
Don't tread on me. Yeah. And I think those slogans go a long way, you know. The organization that I work for, we're heavy on showing graphics, so not hiding the truth of what actually is taking place in an abortion. The only struggle that we have is that getting these graphics just in the general public is hard, because nobody wants to have a bloody aborted baby on a billboard. So the next resource at our fingertips is language. I mean, that's what's next. And to be able to cleverly use language to get the point across, in a way that's palpable for the public, I think is necessary. So you really hit the head on the nail here. We have to get our message out.
Well, and so okay, yes, but the first step to getting the message out is knowing what the message is, and I would go back one step from there. The real first step is fostering the conviction to develop and deploy a message in the first place, and that is the actual square one that we're starting from, is because right now in this moment, because a lot of people are looking at the things that you started out citing, the passage of these amendments in conservative and purple states, and the takeaway that they have from it is, well, I guess that's it. I guess the pro-life movement's over. I guess, you know, we gotta pack it in, guys. They won. If we ever hope to have majorities again or to win statewide again, then we better just, you know, forget about this issue and move on. And so between the people who we talked about earlier, who are like the legit pro-abort Republicans and conservatives, who are kind of closeted about it,
Right.
and then this new emerging block of people who are kind of like, well, you know, what are you going to do? Lower taxes are more important than babies, so, you know, let's focus on the economic issues and not talk about social issues anymore. It's like you have this coalition of the people who are for it and the people who are for who don't really care about it, and they're trying to make the case, and a lot of them are donors.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore have influence, and so, you know, you're having to fight this emerging movement of people who are saying you guys shouldn't even be talking about this. And so I think the place to start is by taking that on head on, and rejecting it and saying, no, I don't care how much money you've donated to the party, or telling me you're not going to donate in the future. I'm going to be judged by history as having been on the right side of abolition. Okay, like I'm more interested in being on the right side of the Civil War than I am on whether or not, you know, John Wilkes Booth over here thinks I'm a great guy. And so that's where you start. But you know, obviously we want to have as big of a coalition as we can. And so you also want to kind of try to persuade them to your side. And I think the way that we persuade those people, especially the ambiguous ones, who, you know, are just kind of like, well, I don't know,
Right.
is you persuade them with moral leadership. You persuade them by making a strong moral argument for why this is still an issue worth fighting for. And I think that argument is essentially twofold. The first being what we already talked about, that we need to address why women are making this decision and have a conversation about how we're treating women in our society, and why they are being victimized by the abortion industry and bullied into making a decision that they're going to regret and that's going to leave them empty and hollow and with vacancies at their bedside when they die.
Right.
And then number two, realizing that history is going to judge this moment. And what you're talking about doing, every time one of these constitutional amendments passes, that is a footnote in history of when a state amended its constitution for the purpose of denying civil rights to an entire category of human beings. That's what you're voting for. You are voting for being on to the moral left, or beneath the morality of the slaveholding South. Like this would be like if we were to repeal the 13th Amendment, or if we were to revoke the Emancipation Proclamation.
Right.
Like that's the type of action that you're talking about doing. And I guess if you want to be on record as a footnote in history of having done that, I guess go ahead, but I'd rather not.
Exactly.
You know.
No, that's so powerful, and I really appreciate you saying that. I think you're absolutely right. These states have gone backwards, and they will be an embarrassment 50 years from now when our kids look back and say, oh my goodness, where was Ohio on this issue of child killing? Oh, look at that. The moment that they could reverse course, they did. Gee, I don't know if I want to send a camp there, those Ohio.
Yeah.
Like, that's insane.
10 years before I was born, there were states in this union where my parents' marriage would have been illegal because I'm biracial.
Okay.
And so, I look back at that and I think, wow, there were states in America that regarded me and would today regard my children as abominations not worthy of being upheld by the law.
Right.
That is what is going to be thought of these amendments, as you say, 50, 100, 200, like however long it takes is arguable,
Right.
but it will occur. Like at some point, when the consequences of systemically murdering our own children manifest to the point where Social Security collapses and
we have no people here, and
we have nobody to do the jobs, and like at some point we're gonna get our heads on straight and realize we've made a terrible mistake. And past that point, generations are gonna look back and they're gonna point at this moment and they're gonna say, "Wow, those people were insane and immoral, and I'm glad I wasn't them."
Right. That's so true. And of course they're going to say, and if I was one of those people back then, I would have never advocated for that kind of, atrocious legislation.
Well, and that's the other point that I make is I say I'm sick and tired of people live action role playing about how awesome they would have been during the Civil War or during the Civil Rights era, how imagining how closely they would have marched alongside MLK. You want to impress me? Take a stance against modern slavery. Take a stance against the murder of children that's occurring right now and that's being proposed. Take a stance against the stripping of civil rights from children in 2024. That's how you impress me with your moral superiority, not by taking the uncontroversial side of an issue that was won 100 years ago.
Right. There's no skin in the game for that. That's over.
Right.
Wow. No, that's powerful. Yeah, this is the modern civil rights issue. This is the civil rights issue of our time. And I'm so glad that you're awake and that you've seen that and you recognized it and you recognize just how close to home it could have been. I just don't feel like people are in touch with how laws in some way, shape, or form trace back to them. It does. It comes back to haunt you. It comes back to bite you. And we can't be so removed from being involved in this as of course we'd like to be for convenience sake. Pro-lifers need to go out and vote. If this horrible bill ends up on the Florida ballot or any of these other states, there has to be a fight against it by the other side. Pro-lifers need to actually activate, go to the polls, and vote. that should not be difficult. And I just don't think that happened in these last elections. That's my hope, is that it didn't happen. My hope is that we weren't truly outvoted, but that the other side was really a sleeping giant that stayed asleep during these voting days.
Yeah. Well, and yes. So a couple of points there, and then I might have to let you go. I appreciate the time. But so I have a couple of thoughts on that, and there are more thoughts that are just kind of regarding elections generally, but I think they apply specifically to this issue as well. Number one, our side has really handicapped itself by embracing in recent cycles this narrative of elections being rigged. Now, I firmly believe that there are all sorts of problems with our election system that need to be addressed. I believe that election integrity is a serious issue that action needs to be taken on. However, the way that we've often talked about that has had the perhaps unintended effect of greatly demoralizing our own side. So you get people who say things like, well, there's no point in me getting involved or doing anything or going out to vote because it's all rigged and it's not going to matter anyway, right? Well, I mean, if you spend your time in the locker room talking about how you're going to lose, then yeah, it's going to become a self-fulfilling prophecy, right?
That's true.
So we need to stop doing that. But then number two, and it's kind of tied to number one, is we've had an incredibly, forgive my crudeness, but with horror approach to adapting to these new election laws. So, we spend so much time talking about how much we don't like early voting and we don't like absentee voting and we don't like the new processes that have been put into place by all these George Soros, secretaries of state, that we didn't bother to spend any time adapting our campaign structure and our get out the vote structure to actually take advantage of it. And the good news on that front is that everywhere I go, when we talk about these issues in 2023 and 2024, people are waking up to these facts and realizing that we got to get serious about playing the game by the rules as they are written rather than the rules as we prefer them to be. And so, that silent majority that you're kind of evoking, I think the way that you tap into them is by adjusting our electoral operations so that we're actually turning out that vote.
Okay, that's excellent. Yeah, I definitely think that's something that I can share, with the people that look up to what we do and are waiting on, updates from this meeting. Life News was interested in what, might be covered today and in the weeks going forward. So I think that's definitely something to repeat, because we need a strategy that will work. Because what we've been doing it's not working. We definitely need to change course a little bit. Well, Mr. Hudson, thank you so much. I appreciate you being on here.
Of course.
I'm going to continue these meetings. And if you have time to come back on, please do.
So you say you do it every Friday?
Every Friday, at 7 Eastern. If that ends up being a time conflict for most people, I might adjust it, but no one said anything yet, and I just started doing them. So,
all right. Well, keep pinging me. If you notice, don't let me forget about you. And hopefully we'll end up getting 30, 50, 100 people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have a good night.
Have a good night. You too. Bye. So that was our interview with Mr. Hudson. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you learned a thing or two. And if you are indeed a pro-life voter, please make sure that this November you actually go and vote, because it's your vote that will counter a lot of the momentum that we've been experiencing recently at the polls from the other side. So please do your part, go out and vote this November, and share this video with someone who needs to see it. Thank you guys so much. And if you want more updates on our progress with pushing back on these pro-choice amendments, please like and subscribe and share this video. I will talk to you guys very soon. Bye.